That's 144. Just so as we can understand what we were dealing with on Pesach. Now, only because you have been studying the Talmud Sefirot, so you can penetrate some of the words, some of the concepts that that are related to Pesach. Right? He says, "V'hinei paro arasha mechashev gadol haya en kamo." In other words, Paro, the wicked, was a great mechashev, a great sorcerer, magician, whatever, but not in terms of the terms of cosmos. And there was never anyone like him. Moshe Amar Zal, v'yada b'chachmato. It's a Gemara in Moed Katan that he knew his craft. He knew his craft. And he also knew Histalkut Ze'ir Ampin Akadosh V'chazarto L'kanes Besod Ha'ibur Toch Ima Ilah וראה כי אין זעיר אנפין הנקרא שם הוויה משגיח ושליט אז בעולם. To understand what the Ari is stating here is to picture, and I'm happy that there is so much written today on this subject. We are accustomed in our education has taught us that you go from a linear space of past to future. Can you go from future to past? In quantum physics, that's a concept that should be treated with. In other words, there is a possibility. Meaning, if you could know tomorrow, today, rather, we go in the linear route of past or present to future. But if we can go from future to past, wow. Because Paro, and again, Paro was merely a channel. He said the Torah is only a cosmic code. It's merely stating concepts to permit us to grasp ideas of what's happening beyond the five senses. Paro was the epitome, and he portrayed the total energy force of the desire to receive for oneself alone. That thought intelligence. What the Creator did to avoid the complete subjection of the light, he reversed the process, and it conforms with present day thinking. It is like we came out of the womb, we were a fetus, and became a child. And what he did was reverse the process. From child, he brought the energy that was established in the world and moved it back, that level of energy, of Ze'ir Ampin, and reverted it back into a concealed state of, let's say, fetus, so as to avoid the hand of Paro, of grasping onto that and clutching onto that kind of energy, and thereby the Jew, meaning the channel that could reveal all the Chachma, the force, would never become revealed again as a pure energy force, but only as a negative force of the desire to receive for oneself alone. So what he's saying here, he returned during the days of Egypt, in the Middle Kingdom, he returned that energy force into the form of a new bar, as a fetus, concealed. This is what he's saying. And therefore, when he continues, Paro, לכן בא משה אליו, כפה בעיקר, ואמר לא ידעתי את השם. And therefore, when Moshe came to Pharaoh and said, God said, leave the Jews out, he says, what God are you talking about? I don't know such God. I mean, that's the conversation. But essentially, the Adi says, what was transpiring between Paro and Moshe was that the energy that once prevailed, which Paro also recognized existed, but he says in its present state of affairs, I don't see it. That's what it meant. He was kafa bi'ikat. He said it disappeared. And we once discussed about disappearance. You remember about coincidence. Another mikre. What is it, mikre? Two things come together. Why are they joined together? There's no cause. So therefore what? It does not exist. So the difference between Paro and Moshe was this one little point, is their disappearance in spirituality, or is there disappearance in metaphysics? And Paro said yes, there was. And Moshe said no. The tetragrammaton, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the channel for this, for the force, for all the Chachma, remained. How did he know that? He said, there's my God, the Taleh, the ram, Aries. There it is. When I draw from that channel called the ram, and that's why it's called a God. What do you mean it's a God? We discussed that last time. Meaning, like all names of God, even the tetragrammaton, Yud Kei Vav Kei, is God? Of course not. Is God included within letters? Is God a man? Well, what is God? God is a force. But he becomes manifested in various ways. In fact, 72 ways, called the 72 names. And then you have tetragrammaton, you have Elohim, you have Adonai, you have several names of God. Now, what are you talking about? God has aliases? Of course not. What we're discussing is different levels of revelation of the force of God. Not God himself. There is no such thing as God being converted into a name. So he recognized that the force of the tetragrammaton no longer existed. And Moshe said, it does exist. He says, but where? I don't see it. I don't grasp it. This is the God. The one that everyone can see. And when he had all of these very wise men around him, this was not just, in terms of being magicians as we understand, the hand is quicker than the eye. This was thought, energy, intelligence, which was negative, but nevertheless existed. And therefore, on Shabbat HaGadol, which is incidentally this coming Shabbat, called Shabbat HaGadol. Why is it called Shabbat HaGadol? Well, superficially, the Torah says that they were commanded to take that same ram, the Aries, and draw it to yourself. Take it into your home. I mean, this is the literal relation of the tale. And therefore it's called Shabbat HaGadol. And the Shabbat is going to be very powerful because that occurred on the 10th day of Nisan. Why did it occur on the 10th day of Nisan? Again, the Torah should not be interpreted as a tale or a story, but rather providing us with an insight into the cosmology or the battle of the cosmos that was going on at that time, so as that we can now understand what happens upstairs, that which we don't see, and we know how to deal with it. The commandment to take the ram, and it's called Shabbat HaGadol because this was the first instance where a nation, not only Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, but a nation as a whole, took control. Remember, it took control of the cosmos. Remember, we learned in the last session that HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, that this was the first time that a nation was provided with the information on how to control the cosmos. Control. Understand the cosmos. To manipulate the cosmos for one's own benefit. Now on this Shabbat, it became physically expressed because the ram represented the desire to receive for oneself alone, the power of the Egyptian, the power of witchcraft, and the Ari says Paro was Mechashef HaGadol because he knew everything there was to know about the thought intelligence of the desire to receive for oneself alone, and that's how he controlled the whole world. That's how he created the idea of mummification. That's how they built the pyramids. Anything of a physical nature, it never was duplicated. The idea of mummifying bodies was lost when the Middle Kingdom fell. Meaning, at the time of the Exodus, the Middle Kingdom fell. With it fell that knowledge of how to manipulate matter. How to manipulate matter, but for evil purposes. And I'm not sure if you picked this up in the class, if Moshe gave you this, but you notice the pyramid is the exact opposite of the Magen David that we use, whereas the pyramid begins at the top point and expands downwards. The bottom of the Magen David comes to a point. It's just the opposite. It's wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. They could manipulate all forms of matter. That energy was channeled to the universe by the Seh, by that ram. And therefore it's called Shabbat HaGadol because this was the first physical expression of control of the cosmos. In other words, they weren't controlling the ram. What's so difficult of controlling the ram? But what the verse is relating to us is the fact that they took control of that internal 99% reality of the ram, which was the desire to receive for oneself alone. And slaughtered it when they did on the 14th. But that's what Shabbat HaGadol was. When that happened, then came the Nes of Pesach. Only then could the Nes of Pesach come, because the Nes of Pesach, as we discussed last time, was this infusion of almost the light of the Ein Sof, which came down not by virtue of the itaruta diletata, meaning the arousal or initiation by the Jews themselves, but rather this came as a gift from above, and therefore, so as to avoid the klipa, which was channeled through the ram, not taking hold of the force, it was necessary to put the ram in control. And therefore it's called Shabbat HaGadol. This, in essence, paved the way for what really happened. Had they not been taught how to control the ram, Pesach could never come about. And by virtue of the reason that if they had never learned the chachma of astrology through that precept of Achodesh Hazeh Lachem, then Shabbat HaGadol would never come about. We said they took control, physically expressing this control by taking. What was the purpose in taking the ram? Because, as we know, no metaphysical thought intelligence, no action can ever become manifested provided it becomes physically expressed. In other words, there's atoms all around, but as long as I don't have a table, in place of the table I just have atoms which are only in a potential steady state, but not manifested. Only is when we take a table, we take some chomer, we take some material matter, that things become revealed. Therefore, the Torah says, draw to you the ram. In other words, this was the physical expression of taking control of the Aries.
Cosmically speaking, why were they doing this on Shabbat? Why was Shabbat a better day than any other day for them to take control of the ram?
Well, why don't you ask a couple of questions before that, right? It was 10th day. Obviously, that seemed to be significant, because you can always ask the question, why did they go out the year after or the year before? At the time, there were many aspects that were taking place in the cosmos. It's like we know every 28 years the sun returns to its former position, its position at the time of creation. While it returns every year, but as we all know, the sun also rotates. And it takes 28 years for it to return back to its original position of creation. It doesn't appear to us as if the sun is moving. It's the earth that moves around, but they're all moving together. The sun also moves. 28 years. Why 28 years? From the word koch. That's obvious. Again, kaf, chet, 28. Because that's the power of the sun. The sun represents positive energy. The moon is negative energy. Has no light of its own. Why was it on the 10th day? So again, we have to ask the question, why is the month divided into 30 days? So the Zohar says the first 10 days is a cosmic effect of positive energy, Hesed, and therefore it appears like the moon is rising, ascending. In other words, why does the moon rise? Why does it become more revealing? Not because the moon becomes more revealing, but because there's a force of Hesed that brings the position of the sun and the moon into its position that it appears, because the cosmic energy of Hesed rules. When does Hesed become fully expressed? On the 10th day.
Of the month.
Of the month. Every month. Every month. So the time, what we're discussing about tefillin, the time to execute and make physically manifested, when they would be cosmically in tuned with that energy that could assist them in taking control, it was tefillin all over again, if you want to put it that way. Therefore, we put tefillin on in the morning, not in the afternoon. Because we need the assistance of the cosmos to bind the left. Same thing all over again. But, whereas every morning you don't need, we don't put it on only on the 10th day of the month. To take control of this force called the ram, it required the 10th day. So it was the 10th day that was significant, and not always does the 10th day of the month of Aries, meaning when the moon appears until its 10th day, not always is the 10th day of Nisan on Shabbat. This year it's rather very significant, because not only do we have the benefit of the cosmic experience of the Exodus. In other words, that's what we're going to create our software shortly to tune into the hardware that we establish by knowing what the hardware is all about. But also we will have the assistance, not complete assistance, because we don't have the 28-year experience when the sun is most powerful. When is anything most powerful? When it first emerges. What's more powerful, the seed or the branch? What's more powerful, the root or the seed? Well, seed contains the root. The root no longer contains the seed. It contains the following projected processes. So anything that is at the beginning, at the head, like the month of Aries, which is the head, the first month. Therefore, what we hope to accomplish in Pesach will be for the entire year. If it's done right, we've established our cassette for the entire year, meaning we will rule over the enemy, we will rule over the negativity and whatever. Now, because Pesach appears from the day point of view, the 10th day is on Shabbat. The Jew, the 15th day of the month of Nisan, at the time of the Exodus, was on Thursday. So we're going to experience many similar cosmic effects. The more the cosmic effects that can assist us, the greater is the opportunity. But let's say, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago when we said Birkat Hachama. I forgot, it was 4 years ago. Yeah. Then the sun in the sun it began its new rotation. It was at the Rosh. It was at the beginning. Obviously, it's more powerful. The further removed from the source, the weaker things become. All right. So that's the significance. Now, in the Ke'ara, all right, before that. Now, another aspect that we have to check is Bedikat Chametz. Bedikat Chametz. We must search for the Chametz, and that is done the night of the 14th, which in this case will be Tuesday evening. Now, why do we have to make Bedikat Hametz? When basically, if we were to nullify and say all of my Hametz is Hefker, doesn't belong to me, I have in effect removed all of the Hametz. Why do we have to do the Bedikat? And why don't we call it Bi'ur Hametz? In other words, the destroying of the Hametz. We say Bedikat Hametz. And of course, we, according to the Ari, we take 10 pieces of bread and put it all around. Why do you call it Bedikat Hametz? Searching for the Hametz. And unfortunately, today we've forgotten the spirit of the Bedikat Chametz and have gotten so involved in what we call spring cleaning, right? I mean, that's a good time to get your house in order, right? The physical aspect. When actually there should be an internal cleansing. What comes first, internal or external? The reason for making the Bedikat Hametz, the physical expression of seeking out the Hametz, if it isn't accompanied with the internal bidika, with the internal purification, I'm just like getting rid of burning the chametz. I mean, and unfortunately, most Jews who still subscribe to this precept get so involved with the hametz and destroy the hametz, the material essence, and forget that the real cleansing, it takes place inside, not outside. Because essentially, you don't even have to get rid of the hametz. If you just said, as we do say in the prayer, after the bidika, all the hametz that I see or I don't see should be hefker. And so there's not even really a reason of getting rid of that material defamation. Don't even have to. So the real bidika hametz is internal, not external. But today, we've forgotten the spirit. You want to cleanse yourself? Don't look at it. Well, that's how we discussed throughout the Talmud Sefirot. It's easier to assist others, easier to help others. Because the most difficult place to begin with is oneself. It's easy to clean out all the other stuff, clean out people, assist people, but internally is difficult.
Would it be actually the burning? It's for me, as you say that, I saw like a korban, like korbanot, like whatever that is negative from the 10 aspects that I'm made of. So I look at that aspect, and at the time of burning, I internally, do the same thing with my negativity.
It's the only way that is accomplished. In other words, why can't we make the biur immediately? Why is the process first the bidika, the searching, and then the biur? Why not both at the same time? Or get rid of the bread. Take the bread and throw it out. Get rid of the problem. Right? Why don't we do it that way? But the bidika, and that's why it's called bidika now. In fact, we have to save it until tomorrow morning, right? Why save it until tomorrow morning? Burn it now. You've gotten it. Get rid of it. No. Well, why are they doing it this way? Or why do they tell us to do it this way? If you don't ask questions, and, I guess...
there's a time to look. You have the whole night to look.
Because that was only to trigger and initiate an internal bidika. That's the only reason. And what are we looking for? Where have I offended somebody? What have I done wrong? Being bodek. Why do you have to be bodek? Because as we will shortly learn, this whole thing of Pesach was to remove not the chomer, not the ram. He was a mechashev gadol, says the other. Why do you have to tell us he knew sorcery and witchcraft and so on? He was a great leader. He put these Jews in bondage. They wanted to get out because nothing of that tale deals with physical release. Because no bars a prison make, and right? You can live in your own home and you're in prison. So, the tale there, and that's how we relate to Pesach, really deals with how can I break out of my own small prison, my own limited world that I find myself, and I can't extricate myself out of where I am. That's what this is about. Therefore, the bidika takes place in that we can then reflect and have time to think about where internally I've got to, and there are 10 aspects to negativity, there are 10 sfirot to negativity, as there are 10 sfirot to positivity. And so we make this bidika. We don't get rid of it. We keep searching, both on a physical level and a metaphysical level, internal and external. It is only after that we have made the internal bidika. This is preparing the software. This is where the action is going to take place. We've established the hardware on tape 1, right? Now we're in tape 2, and tape 2 is getting set, trying to establish our software, because we have only this one opportunity. You mean during the year? Yeah, we can probably make a couple of operations and see maybe we can succeed. But we're dealing now with the seed, and if we can correct that seed, we've corrected the entire year. We're trying to tap Ein Sof. But, a 5-watt bulb can't handle atomic energy. The vessel must be reconcilable with the kind of energy we're dealing with, that it's attempting to draw in. And so if we're talking about Ein Sof, these are all of the steps that are required to achieve the bi'ur. And then comes the burning. Now, why do we burn it? Why do we burn it? Again, this is all of the thought intelligence that we establish a software within ourselves. If you don't do this, I guess you haven't done it. You haven't accomplished anything. But I've gone through the motions. Well, 2,000 years we've gone through motions. Something must be wrong somewhere. Well, if it's not wrong, but maybe we're lacking something along the way. Maybe we haven't dealt with the internal, because that becomes a little difficult. It's easy to deal with the external aspects. And therefore, the following day comes the bi'ur. The bi'ur comes through burning. And because we know that all material matter represents one concept, the desire to receive for oneself alone. When something is burnt, it becomes ash. And ash has no continuity. Can't grow anything with ash. In other words, ash represents a complete letting go of the physical matter, because there's no continuity. See, if we cook up water and then it becomes condensation, there's still a continuity of the water in another form, but there's continuity of material matter. That's right. And so it can turn back into water again. By burning the hametz, or burning the lamb, which was the same thing, in essence, and it could only be done through burning, not through cooking. By burning, and this is the trip we're supposed to be going through. If we don't go through this trip, then when we come to the stage 2 of establishing the software, which is the Seder itself, the foundation is not there, and you begin on floor 2.
Actually, what comes to me is the restoration of the soul. Am I correct, or
in a word, that would be correct?
Is how you restore your neshama.
Well, let's restoring the neshama in essence hasn't really been affected. It's been imprisoned, maybe. And we're looking now at the spring out. Spring out that soul from its prison, and that means our own soul being imprisoned. The reason we suffer or we endure pain is because the soul is not permitted to exercise circuitry, because the soul is an inbuilt channel for circuitry. What is the soul? The soul is the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. It's automatic. It's like the trees and everything else that can maintain, energy, atomic energy. So the soul has no problem. It's because it's become confined within the body, which is the essence of the desire to receive for oneself alone. Everything. Yeah. Okay. Right. All right. Now, as we discuss in the 10 Luminous Emanations, volume number 2, this is where we, I guess this is what happened. We know this is the paradox. We know from one point of view, if we don't do the bidika, the searching with pieces of bread, if we don't do the burning of these pieces of bread, something is lost along the way. Because, as in our own experience, nothing becomes revealed provided it becomes enclosed within material matter. At the same time, let's not forget that material matter is only an illusion. It is only an illusion. Why is it an illusion? Because it really only represents 1/10 of 1%. So how much of a force is it? But that 1/10 of 1% seems to be sufficient to express the reality, which is the internal. The same way here. We're dealing with bread. We're dealing with burning. I mean, why can't we go through just thought trips? My heart's in the right place. Why isn't that enough? I think to give charity. My heart's in the right place. I want to help my friend. My heart's in the right place. I mean, why do we physically have to go through the steps? Because unfortunately, or fortunately, this is what we have to deal with. The physical reality creates revelation. But let's not understand that the physical reality is the essence. The scientist told you that the table, the force of a table, the force of a chair that prevents something from going through it is not the physical material matter, but rather the internal 99.9% called the unseen atoms. So we have to create a balance between ourselves.
Show the desire from the side of the vessel. This is what manifested in the endless world. This is the desire, He makes this.
That there must be, that there must be a vessel. Now, unfortunately, in the world of action where we are, this vessel is not like the vessel of the Ein Sof. This is a vessel that has no affinity. No affinity with the force, with the awe, with the light. But, so as to create an illusion, we create the table. Who created the table? We. Who creates anything? We. This is the illusionary process that was necessary, that we've discussed in the in 10 Luminous Emanations number 2. Okay? Now, we'll go to page Kuf Mem Daled. No, we just read that. Okay. Now we come to the Ke'ara. The Ke'ara is that which, setting up the software. Because we're going to make use of this Ke'ara to make the connection. All that we've discussed until this point is that I am ready. If I'm not ready, and if my head is not there, and I haven't brought my head together, what I have on the table, which is going to be a physical representation of my head trip, and we'll shortly see how. So this is not a game, or this is not religion, it's not tradition. What all the other names we attribute to the Pesach Seder is not what maybe we've been accustomed to treating what goes on the night of Pesach. if we are now in tune by our thought intelligence, which is 99% of us, we now have to physically express this software that we have established within ourselves through the bidika, through the biur. And now we come to the physical expression of this internalization of ourselves, and we follow the principles of the Ari, because there are two kinds of ke'ara. The seder plate, in Hebrew it's called ke'ara. Incidentally, ke'ara is kuf ayin resh hey, and that is 375. Is that right? The reason, again, in Hebrew it's 375 because with the 10 sfirot, if we can establish the 10 sfirot of the clean column, or what we say the system by which the force can flow, we then control the 365. So the name of Ke'ara was established, again, to indicate what are we really talking about. We're talking about 365 days. This one night will control 365 days.
375 controls.
The 10 will control the 365 days. All right. Now we follow the software of the Ari. There are two systems in setting up this software. One is the Ari, and the other one was the Gaon of Wilna. And ours is with six manifestations on that plate, obviously representing the 6 sfirot. And you have the triad. You have the triad, the Magen David, which is essentially the tool that we make use of in tapping this kind of energy, in tapping a hard disk, is the Magen David, and therefore there are 6. On the upper triad, we have 3, which consists of the right is the something that will portray and represent the Paschal lamb, the Seh. And so the tradition is, when I say tradition, I mean, again, some take a neck of an animal or some part of an animal, the neck, basically. And shortly we'll understand why the neck. We take the neck and we burn that. We burn that. And we put that down on the plate. Okay. Now, I don't know how to stress this often enough that we never forget that from a Kabbalistic point of view, and from a physics point of view, and it's so beautiful today, that when most Jews conform to this tradition and burn the neck and put it down on the plate, I mean, it's a neck. So now, before it was a plain neck, an unburned, and now it's a burnt neck. Like, so what? So what? And therefore, when, from a Kabbalistic point of view and from a physics point of view, nothing exists there until what? You decide that it is there. In other words, they're even telling us the chair does not exist until you have decided the chair is there. Okay? And we agree with that. This represents a channel for right column energy, because in the atom you have 3. So no matter what, in any energy system, you're going to have to somehow bring 3 different forces together. The reason this is on the right side, and it's called the Zroa,
Upper right.
what's that?
Upper right.
Upper right, is because it represents Hesed. Why does it represent Hesed? Because Hesed is in essence a vessel that does not have any desire to receive. That was what Bina attempted to do. Remove the aspect of a desire to receive. When the Jew burnt the ram, what was he doing? He was nullifying, canceling out, producing it not into ash, but the aspect of burning. When they were burning, this is what the Jew was thinking of at that time. He was canceling out that negative aspect of the ram. You don't have to destroy the ram. They ate the ram. They ate the seh. Why did they burn it completely? Get rid of it. Because that was physically expressed by burning it. And so they canceled out the aspect of negativity. So when we establish that zroa, the neck, we take a piece of neck. And the reason we take a piece of neck is, in Hebrew, Egypt is called Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim. Because the neck is the narrowest part of the body, right? It comes from tzah. The word Mitzrayim comes from meitzah, narrow. And this narrow part, you see, the reason the neck is narrow is because the total energy intelligence of an individual is obviously in the upper part, the head. When everything begins to evolve, become more dense, become more manifested, there is a lessening of that energy. It's the same way as when I have a thought and then I express that thought. Obviously, the words now have limited the full extent of what the thought was.
Cut off the intelligence, the thing that directs everything.
That's right. Well, you kind of squeezing it, right? Therefore, we use the neck because that neck was indicative of what the Egyptians were doing to the force, squeezing it out that it should become manifest rather than the negative part, because the force, the light, is positivity, the aspect of sharing. And so they squeezed it out. So when we burn that, we're burning that aspect, that physical material that was representing the squeezing out or limiting force of the ram, the neck. Let me say neck, and that's why it was called Egypt. Mitzrayim, Meitzar, that was their power to reduce the capacity of the brain. That's what cults say. Give me a brain, right? That's all they want. Give me a brain is the expression. I want to take over your brain. Taking over your brain, well, nothing else. What they've done here is limited the effect of positivity, and that's why we use the neck, just to explain why we use that. And this is, so when we put that piece of neck down, that burnt piece of neck down, this is the thought that we must establish. By thinking so, you have thus established that part of the system for you. Then we go to the left column, which is an egg. You take an egg.
Some people use shank bones.
What's that?
Some people use shank bones instead of the neck.
Yes.
Yes. All right. But the important aspect, because it's also called Zeroah, I really want to get, finish to a certain part. We can stay on that too a long time. But as long as we've done what we've done now, that would be sufficient. The aspect of burning it, knowing what we're doing by that. We're setting up a positive, the proton.
On a direct fire? Or
Direct fire. In essence, which we'll come to shortly when we deal with the matzot, every atom consists of three forces. What's going to dominate what depends on man's thinking intelligence. Does the mind control matter? We believe it does. But we haven't got scientific instruments to detect what the mind and how the mind is affecting material matter. But from a Kabbalistic point of view, we do affect. So when we have canceled out what in effect we're saying, but it's still in essence, it remained. That's why the commandment was not to burn completely the ram so it was not edible. Everything remained, except the thought intelligence of burning that the Jew had at that time, and physically expressing that burning, was in essence taking like the proton. You are now going to be the dominant force in this part of the system. So we establish positive energy as the dominant force over the other two, the neutron and the electron. Okay? Is that clear? I don't want to dwell on it. I don't want to go further, all right? Now we take an egg. Again, conventional ideas are the egg symbolizes, so what? But it symbolizes, the Jew. The more you beat it, the more you cook it, and the harder it gets. But obviously, we're talking about instruments. But in Aramaic, the word for beitzah, egg, is be'ah, which means desire. So by cooking that egg, why does it get hard? Sure, it gets hard. Nobody asks, how come it does get hard? How come everything in this universe, the more it's subjected to fire, the softer it gets, right? Cook rice, beans, they become soft. Vegetables become soft. And here it's the opposite. Why don't you ask? Why is it rather than, so because of the lack of understanding, when the Ari says it's be'ah, meaning that it has a quality of a preponderance or domination of the left column of desire to receive. And so when you cook that egg, the reason it gets hard, because you're intensifying the desire to receive. And we know that's what Pharaoh was doing. He intensified the desire to receive. That was the aspect of pyramids. Material matter. That's how he could do what with a body? Naturally, after a person dies, that body should disintegrate. What did he do? Normally, when you cook the egg, it should nimas. It should become soft, right? Not become firm. What did the Egyptian do? He knew the art of how to preserve, maintain. That's what's happening with the egg. It continues to maintain itself. The more it's cooked. That was only to indicate to us the potential energy of an egg. And it should be boiled. Why shouldn't it be? Because in a soft state, we do not see that physical manifestation of what we understand is the thought intelligence of that egg. So therefore we establish that as givura. In other words, this is what you say. This is the sfirat of chesed, the burnt neck or whatever, and the egg is the sfira of gvura, that bottled up energy of left column, the bottled up energy of negativity. You've got to do this. You don't do this, and you're just doing the tradition of making the ke'ara. Where's your system? Where's your system? You mean, but I've done it. Well, so we have telephones and don't talk. So what? So what? Dial, don't talk. You've got to project and inject, arouse its energy intelligence. I mean, the telephone wires are there in a potential steady state. But if I do not activate it by my thought first, and then speaking, which follows, nothing has gone across. Nothing has been activated. All right.
Is that in the upper left part of the plate?
What's that? That's the upper left part. Right.
We just boil it.
What's that?
We just boil it.
Boiled egg.
There's so many people I have seen, they roast the
Scramble.
Oh, well, I guess by roasting it becomes hard too. Yeah, that would be good.
boil or roast.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
That doesn't make it. The important is that it's a hard egg. But the reason why it's a hard egg and it gets harder is for the reason we just explained. Okay? Let's see where. I think we are now going to go to the reason we want to read this. We're going now to Kuf Samach Gimel. That's 163 in the Shara Kavanot. Steadily, if you can read any part, whether you understand or you do not understand, you must always remember that intelligence, Bina, came and followed Chachma. So the fact that you, the 5% of you, do not understand, but don't think for a moment that your 99% internal intelligence doesn't understand what you're reading. Or you know what you're reading.
Yesterday I was reading it for many hours, and I knew that I didn't understand most of those hours,
but it was
like 1 or 2
beautiful
points that just...
It wasn't the one. The 1 or 2 points was the consciousness that appreciated it.
It wasn't the points understanding.
But the 99% got it.
What is the difference between the upper part and the lower part? Yafasha.
What?
You have the upper
that's
part.
an explanation. It's
This is the explanation.
yeah, where points where he felt that it was a little more difficult.
So like the next page, you got more of the explanation. Okay. But are we reading the explanation when we read it, or we read the actual?
The actual text. Okay, we have now here. Now we come to Tiferet, which is the point, the third in the middle, a little lower, like in the Magen David.
The bottom.
And there, no, not the bottom. Below the first two, because we're going to have 6. We're going to have 2 triads, right here in the middle. There we have the maror. Maror, the bitter herb. That's root. Why do we take maror? What does that represent? First of all, the least you can do, whether you understand the total meditative comprehension of any of these parts of the software, don't become disillusioned or frustrated. Look, there's so much. How come? All I know is the top. But at least if you say this maror is Tiferet, that thought intelligence of Tiferet, meaning the neutron, now becomes established. Now, the more you know, the greater the connections, the greater the revelation of things. True. But at least your software now has become a working system for you. But just by putting down the maror, not knowing what it is, and not even knowing what it represents, then what have you done? All right? Ve'inyan hamaror b'gematria mavet. The maror, the bitter herbs, is numerically the value of mavet, which means death. Now, another aspect of Kabbalah is numerology, but numerology is no different than formulas and equations in physics. They use numbers. What's the language of physics?
Numbers.
Mathematics. You see, but if you call it gematria, that stay away from that. But one day we'll tell the physicist also, Asur, he's not permitted to deal with numbers. How do you operate a business without numbers? I don't know yet, but I guess over there you're allowed. Anyway, numerically it adds up to mavet. V'hu b'chinat hadinim hakashim. Now, if you ever tasted the raw when it's just been grated, have you eaten that maror? It's pretty bitter. But not only is it bitter, and of course, if you have to take even the quantity, and quantity obviously deals with greater revelation and lesser revelation, but there has to be a kazayit, size of an egg, an olive, but say the size of an egg. I mean, you can pass out. You can pass out. Take my word for it, you can pass out. But in any event, why can you pass out? I mean, why is it that way? The reason is because the Ari says it's b'chinat hadinim akashim. What is dinim kashim? Dinim kashim is electric current coming into a bulb and the filament doesn't work. It blows. Why? You have live energy and the vessel can't handle it. A stillborn, in fact, of a child is the same concept. The soul that was destined to come into this body, the body couldn't handle it. It's like, the electric chair, in effect, is the same concept. The body can't handle the intensity of the volume of electric current entering the body. This sudden surge. The maror, the internal components of the maror represents that aspect of mavet. It can bring one to death, like the electric chair. It can bring one to death. Well,
when we eat that, we're supposed to eat that undiluted, though, right? Because so many people use
we're going to come right to it. Now, a question that again, this is knowledge. We've got to go through this. If you don't know these reasons, you can establish at least at its very minimum the maror is tiferet, central column. But the moment you hear central column with death, I mean, we've been studying now for the past half a year is, wait a second, central column is what creates circuitry. There's no blowing out, no short circuitness when you have the central column. Right? So how do we reconcile the maror as tiferet, as central column? In other words, as if the maror now will make contact. As if the maror will make contact. And so the Ari, and only the Ari that I've seen, presents this kind of concept. שצריך לתכנן ולעשן בשיניים כדי למתק המרירות שבהם. In other words, and this is halacha too, when you partake of the maror, this is, superficially the halacha, you just can't swallow it. You can put it into your mouth and gulp it down, right? The Ari says the halacha says you can't do it that way. You've got to chew it. Get the real effect of it. Pass out, but get the real effect of it, right? Why? Why? But this is why? Because again, we're setting up software here. Because when you reach that state, which this maror is going to assist us in connection, the only time you can create a vaccine is by using the live virus. Does anyone know why you must use live virus to create a vaccine? But that's the way a vaccine operates, right? You must take, in central column, you've learned what's central column? The negation of what I want. Is that right? What's restriction? Not that I don't want, as we've discussed many a time. I do want, but I'm going to restrict. I do want, but I'm going to restrict. Here, we're going to make every attempt to create a similarity between me and what happened on Pesach. What happened on Pesach? There was a total canceling out of the desire to receive for oneself alone. Now, if we were to pass out with eating the maror, in effect, there would be death. Death of what? Death of the desire to receive for oneself alone. So, to create a similarity, and this is the epitome of central column, it's when I say I need a piece of bread now or not, I'll die. And then we learn in Kabbalah, at that moment, you have to say what?
No.
Nope. The paradox of the universe. Everything is paradox. So that's not, we have to achieve paradox. So here we're sitting down at this table to tap energy, and along comes the maror and says, "Stop dead." The paradox. I mean, here we're supposed to be tapping energy. We want to control the 365 days of the year, and at the same time we have to go through that process. Paradox, but it is so close to what the physicist tells us.
Give me. This is a big opportunity. Stop. Wait a minute.
That's right. Exactly. The paradox is central column. The paradox in the universe, which they don't understand, paradoxical natures that are contained within the universe. They have no idea. They have no idea of why there are paradoxes, but paradoxes have been confirmed scientifically of its existence. We know why, because it's only through paradox. It's only through the realization that if I have materialism, that it's not the meaning to go sell dresses or sell shoes or cut hair. It's not the meaning, because in fact, it's got somehow you have to create a physical expression via material matter. But don't get hung up with it.
It's very interesting. This morning, before I went to the mikveh, I was in the car and I'm listening, and all of a sudden I see what restriction was about for me at that point. And it seems to me that if there is no restriction, everything will be a big mush.
Okay, if you realize that,
because if everything is if everything wants everything. Without the restriction, you don't have the restriction, you don't have the distinctions, and therefore nothing can be manifest.
You have a mess.
That is correct. If everything wants it.
Nothing is structured because everything swallows everything else.
That's
right.
That's
exactly the perception of civilization. Whether it's this nation swallowing this one or this one swallowing that, but this is the ongoing
Conglomerates.
Right. Even conglomerates. That's right. That ultimately must die.
One business
swallows another, and they become bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point when they become so big they go under. All right. So, beside establishing the maror as one of the traditional aspects of the ke'ara, we are establishing paradox. Tiferet is paradox. Paradox. It is din. It is what we said in the study of the 10 luminous emanations, that first comes the head trip. Nobody builds a building before he goes through a head trip. The head trip must require restriction. Must require restriction. The paradox. Well, wait a second. Here I want to put up a 67-story skyscraper, and I say 67 because it's significant. A 67-story skyscraper. Why? Why? Well, I figured all the reasons out, the financial rewards and everything. At that moment, I've got to say, well, wait a second. If these are all the things and all of the benefits that will accrue by my building the building, this is all in the head, right? I've got to restrict all that and not build the building. Then there's energy in that building. So we've studied that. This is Tiferet. This is Tiferet. In fact, you know of the 6 Sfirot. The totality of the 6 Sfirot are called 1hr&33min, but there is another name for the totality of the 6 Sfirot, which is also Tiferet. Why is this third Sfira also called Tiferet? Why don't we give it another name? Why don't we give it a name like Yesod, which will also be in the lower triad, also central column? Why do we give it the name Tiferet? Because if your head trip hasn't undergone restriction, nothing else will ever materialize. Oh, George, well, there's the building. But we don't want to go into that. That doesn't mean everything has worked out. I mean, the building can go up, but you can go bankrupt. Possible? And the building will never be yours in spite of the fact that the building is there. Because someone else built that building. Someone else built the building. The new owners were the original builders of... Wait a second. That's confusing. I'm the one who built the building, but I went bankrupt. And the one who bought it now, he's coming... He's the Johnny-come-lately onto the scene, no? No, if he stays with that building, he was the original builder of that building. I went through an illusionary creative process. I never put up that building. Oh, it appeared like it did. It's like the guy in the bank, 70 years, he keeps signing those approvals for loans, and that's what he does for 70 years, right? And he thinks he's been very busy for 70 years, but all he's really been doing is putting his signature on a piece of paper. Hasn't done much, right? We have these illusions of, and this is what the material world is about, to provide us with an illusion as if we are important, we're doing things. That is Tiferet. That is the totality lies in that one aspect, Tiferet, because that is what the totality of Sfirat Tiferet is all about, the paradox. We must inject that paradox. And so we have that in Maror.
So it's paradox saying that the 1% is not everything. It's only 1%. We're saying...
What a realization that was, Jack. You imagine that the 1% is not everything? That even the 99% also has some validity in this composite of whatever we're talking about. Does that sound... but that in effect is what we say to ourselves all the time. We get so hung up, like in the Bedikat Chametz, get rid of the Chametz, and you've gotten rid of everything. No, you haven't gotten rid of anything. You may have gotten rid of 1/10 of 1%, but the cleansing may never have even begun. So you got to deal with material matter, but at the same time recognize that it still is only a manifestation of 1/10 of 1%. Okay, and he also he brings us in 1hr&33min lavo. I won't go, but this is what the Gemara says. Bala maror lo yatsa. That if you swallow the maror, just swallow it down as quickly as possible, so you do not have the effect of death. Lo yatsa. You have not, in essence, created your software. Now, naturally, we would try to avoid, and just like most of us would rather avoid restriction. If this is something we want, why are we going to restrict that which we want? But this is the paradox of life. Because this is the only way that you turn negative energy, that negative pole, into a circuit. The same way as the filament acts upon the negative pole in a bulb. The paradox. It reduces the pole to an aspect of positivity. So this is the most important aspect, incidentally. The most important aspect of the whole business that we're doing.
Because we're doing it for ourselves.
Because that's really, that's right. That's right. That's becoming, we're internalizing. Okay. Now we come down to the charoset. Charoset. That's the mixture. That is the mixture which is called netzach, which would be part of the lower triad of the Magen David. Right.
Lower right.
The lower right. Which again, this combination, and we'll get into what are part of its components. When we've made this charoset, that will be the channel for netzach. Netzach. Making use of the Magen David, I didn't even go through that. You know why we have to make use of it. I guess you all know why we have to make use of the Magen David. You know, it's the same reason that the world was created with, in 7 days. You understand the affinity. In other words, 7 energies, right? To control this universe, you must be in control of 7 aspects of energy. Then you can move up to the upper 3. But you first begin with the 7. I hope we don't have to. You all know that. If not, then you can read any of the books that we have.
Both triads are pointing downwards?
What's that?
Both triads are pointing downwards?
No. The lower one points upwards.
Right here. Because Charoset is usually on the bottom. Chasa is on the bottom.
We didn't come to that. Chasa is on the bottom. That's right.
It's another triangle. The triads
Yes.
are pointing down.
Yes.
So the 2 triads are pointing down here on the plate.
No.
On the
You mean they're both pointing that way? Because in essence, you mean someone? Well, I don't want to go into the Magen David. How come the actual physical emblem of the Magen David is with the upper triad facing upwards, right? Right. The top one is like this, with the point on top. And the lower, but that's why I said I didn't want to go into that. I'd get off the point. I mean, why don't we do it that way?
Why doesn't the lower triad point up?
Okay. Because in essence, on a metaphysical level, this is the way it appears. On a physical level, it's to demonstrate. I don't want to. All right.
I got it.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. We can spend, a little time on that too. But the Magen David, the Shield of David, or the Star of David, is called the Shield of David. It's not called the Star of David. The reason it's called the Shield of David, and I don't know where they got the idea of Star of David, but its real meaning is Magen David, and that is the metaphysical weaponry, which, according to the Zohar, and looks like we're getting real close to it, is there won't be any physical warfare. It'll be all through mind waves. That's the way warfare will be conducted in the very near future. This is what Russia has been working on now for the past 10 years, on how to enslave the world through brain warfare. All right?
Are you saying that Maror comes all the way on the bottom?
Not all the way. No, just below the Chesed and Gevura. Or
it should be more towards the middle, in other words, up here, maybe.
No. Oh wait, we're talking about Charoset. Is over to the right, below Maror, below the bitter herbs. It's on the right.
Here, really.
Well, below, because it's a lower triad.
Yeah.
Right. But over to the right.
Am I in the right spot? Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. Now, what is this Charoset about? Huzecha letit. It is a zecha, which means a remembrance for the mortar. V'hu besod Leah. Now, what does that mean, besod Leah? For those of you who know that Leah mentioned in the Bible there were two sisters, Leah and Rachel. These two represent the upper and lower triads, according to the Zohar. Leah is the upper, the concealed. It's like we said, the head. The head is the concealed, and the lower triad, incidentally, is the manifested state. Prior concealment is the head, right? Thought. Nobody can, it's not expressed. It's in the head, it's concealed. And the lower triad is the physical representation. Leah always represents concealment. Concealment. And therefore it says her eyes were weak, always crying, because when tears run down your eyes, you can't see. But this is in brief the idea. Ki anu tzrichim lematek hadinim sheba gam ken. We have to sweeten the dinim. Again, the negative aspect. She's female, and therefore she represents the negative aspect. But charoset is on the right side. It's netzach, which is right column, right? What is charoset before we go any further? The ari, well, you know that it consists of wine. You put wine in there. You chop up wine, apple, almonds, nuts, egozim, dates. Actually, the ari used, and we're not familiar with all of them, but we use also ginger. We're not totally familiar with the what's that?
With the parts of the
With the parts of the 10, but there should be 10. Now, we know one of them, or two of them. One is ginger. It's a herb. And the other one is cumin.
Not cinnamon?
What?
I like
Not cinnamon?
What's that?
Not cinnamon, it's cumin.
cumin.
Some use cinnamon. All right. Now, is cumin? He says cumin. Now, is cumin cinnamon? No. Right. But he says cumin. And the other one is shibolet nerd. What is shibolet nerd? I'm not sure what that means. You know that these were herbs. And that's why I guess we're getting back to herbs, right?
Herbology.
Right? Because that we're using these things, and specifically these things, because they all contain a certain aspect of internal energy. They're channels for internal energy. And according to the Yadi, you need 3 herbs and 7 fruits before we get down to the te'enim, v'rimonim, v'tmarim. Now you can't, and grapes, you can't even get all of these today. Or maybe you can.
Comes to 7.
Comes to 7. 7 fruits and 3 herbs. Okay? 10. That's what the charoset. We're getting it before getting into the particular aspects of each one.
So egozim shkedim is considered fruits?
What's that?
Almonds.
Almonds.
They're considered fruits?
An almond, you say, bori pli hayes. Yes. Yes.
Sure.
It's from the Ktoret, no?
Okay, so some say it means cloves. Cloves?
Cloves.
Right. I'm not sure. Shibolet nerd. Cloves. Yes. Isn't that what you meant? Right. But before we discuss each of these aspects again, today and only today, and that's maybe why we have the Ari, and it has become so popular only of late, is because we can understand why would the Ari say this is the way to do it, because he understood that these different herbs, fruits, were not merely physical manifestations, but physical manifestations acting as channels for something which was more internal, something more powerful. So the strange thing is, he says, we take 3 of these herbs and 7 fruit. Now, you know what 3 and 7 means automatically. 7 is the world of existence, where we're located, and 3 is called Ketach Chachma Bina. Herbs, he relates to Ketach Chachma Bina. Fruit, to the lower degree. In other words, it's the reverse. We would think, you say Bore Pri Hadama, right, on vegetables or herbs, right? Because actually you can have herbs that grow on trees too. Where does kuman come from? Is it? How does kuman? What's that?
It grows from the ground.
From the ground.
From the ground.
Wow, that's what I thought. Right.
It's like a little bush.
Right. And yet, there the 3 herbs represent Ketach Chachma Bina, to indicate to us that the stronger channels for energy are the ones closer to Earth. You know, again, the paradox. Wait a second. You know, because it's closer to the source. What's that? Or Jose? Who said? Yeah, that's right.
Oh, Adama is closer to the source, you're saying.
That's right. That's right. All right. So, Charoset consists of these. We have no time to go into, but we will discuss, because the more we know about these herbs and why they were chosen, the more we know, the greater the intensification of the software. Remember, we said thought, knowledge, is the establishment of our software. There's no other way that you can establish metaphysical communication systems but by Adam Yada et Chava, by the knowing process. So, Charoset comes from 2 words. He mentions this elsewhere. From the word Rut and Chas, or Sach, 68, and Ruth. In other words, the word itself was not, where's the word Charoset come from? Explanation of what internally is happening. Ruth, what does Ruth represent? Malchut. Represents King David. Represents war. Represents in a way death. And Sach, which is 68, which represents Chaim. The Het and the Yud Yud Mem numerically adds up to 68. That tells us that we have 2 parts here. We have death and we have life combined into one.
Sach means life.
Right. It's 68, which numerically adds up to Hayim. 68. These combinations of a totality of 10 is life. It's also din, because what's din? Din is the flow of energy. If the vessel is not prepared, there's death, electrocution. If the vessel can handle the intense energy, then you have circuit. This is called Netzach. Why is it called Netzach? This is Moshe, right? Netzach. Now, what does Netzach mean? Victory. But that's not really, it's the definition that some give to the word Netzach, but also it means eternal. Victory, and what was Moshe all about? Victory does not necessarily mean an eternal state of affairs. you can win the war and you capture certain territories, but it doesn't mean those people now feel part of your kingdom. And at the first opportunity, they will revolt. So it's not eternal. Netzach represents eternal. Now, the reason we can't go back to the future, and the reason we're not tuned into the future, the reason we don't see tomorrow, the reason we are limited, which the result of limitation means pain, death, suffering, and etc., is because the negative aspect of the desire to receive is part and parcel. The night of Passover, we said the Ein Sof became revealed. We have to create an affinity, which means that we have to, at least for a moment, create a situation, circumstances, where death has become canceled. Bila hamavet la netzach. This is the saying of the prophet, that ultimately death will be swallowed up eternally. What is death? What is death? Death deals with the physical reality. The soul does not die. So death represents the aspect of the body. But we once discussed tzaddikim, their bodies do not disintegrate. Even the Egyptians knew how to maintain that body, but from another perspective, from the desire to receive for oneself alone. Eternal means something which cannot be changed. That's the way it is. It's all become part of one unified whole. So these charoset, taking together these 10 different aspects, become what Moshe represented. The canceling of the desire to receive for oneself alone. That was what Moshe was doing. That's what the Jews were doing. This charoset represents for us part of our software in tuning into that aspect of what happened that night. We have to create, the software creates the affinity with the hardware. What is software? Why do you need software? Because that's the program with its affinity to the hardware. Not all software can tap hardware, right? What makes one software, not all Macintosh floppy disks can be used elsewhere. They create it so. It's only good for this, right? Because it has the affinity only with this hardware and not with other hardware. So obviously this whole ke'ara, and we'll stop here, is to create our software as an affinity with what happened that night. Or not, forget it.